broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. This edition of Gun Guy Radio is supplied by Alien Gear Holsters. AlienGearHolsters.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 164 of Gun Guy Radio. This is the podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host, Ryan Machad, and this is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. So this week, I'm joined by Grant Cunningham to discuss his experiences with Steyr Arms. Grant has been a longtime user of Steyr's products and has quite a bit of experience with several of their platforms. So how you doing, Grant? You've made it safely back from NRA.
Yes, I made it back from NRA, and I came home to nice, warm sunshine, so I'm happy.
I kind of had the same experience as you. When I left, there was 4 inches of snow on the ground up here in Maine, and I came back, and all the snow was melted.
Wow.
So it was a fun time. It was great to meet you finally at NRA. It was a really good show. Nashville was a good town to have it in. I feel like they may have been a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of people that showed up.
I think so. I think that's a good way to put it.
But so, did you see anything cool at NRA that you want to talk about real quick?
You know, I saw. Interestingly enough, of course, everybody was talking about the Glock 43, and you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting something about the Glock 43, right? Right. You know, everybody's talking about holsters and everything else. The two things I saw that I thought were really, really cool was a line of furniture to hide guns in your home, and it was a line of very, very high quality Amish furniture from Ohio. Really nice stuff. So that was kind of cool. And the thing that I really wanted, and the thing I really wanted to spend money on, was a company called My Case Builder. And it's mycasebuilder.com, and they custom make foam inserts for your Pelican case or whatever. And it's that nice custom cut high density foam, and they do it all online, and it's very, very cool. And so I'm sitting here looking. I've got a couple of cases that I've got sitting on the desk here looking, what can I put in these cases? I really want to get some of those custom foam inserts. So that was the other thing I saw that was pretty cool.
Well, yeah, and like trying to find stuff for like some of the older revolvers and stuff. I mean, especially the really nice ones that you want to protect in a case like that, you can't really find that out on the market today.
No, and these things are very cool because, like I said, they're custom cut. They like the professional audio cases that you see with the custom cut foam. That's what this stuff is, and it's very cool. And I'm thinking, well, this would be really, really great if I wanted to cart around some of I don't know, maybe some guns or some accessories or even some camera equipment. So it's just one of those things. Every once in a while, you see something that makes you want to spend money. And that's these two things: this concealment furniture and the custom cut foam. I just wanted to spend money.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to actually be looking into that. I really like that concept. NRA was interesting. It was my first trade show. Grant, this was your, I don't know how many times you've been, but
too many.
It was very interesting to see everything on the show floor. From what I understand, obviously not as big as SHOT Show. I did feel like the third day, I was more so not really discovering new things that I hadn't seen, but I was going around talking to people I had already kind of sort of formed a relationship with, and I wanted to they had a lot more time on Sunday. They were more willing to talk, and, you know, I talked with one guy at Firearms for damn near 25 minutes about ballistics and the .30 carbine and their pistols and just a whole myriad of different things. And it was great, you know, to actually make that contact. And now, you know, if I ever have any questions or want to have him on the show, I can email him. And I think Sunday was the best day for that sort of stuff.
Oh, definitely. By the time Sunday at the NRA show, because the NRA show is a consumer show, it's for the end user, and so you've got a lot of marketing and PR people there who by Sunday are really looking for somebody to talk to, where they don't get that same question for the millionth time. Like, how many rounds does this hold? They get tired of answering that question after a while.
Right.
And so Sunday, if you're in the industry, Sunday is a really good day at the NRA show because everybody they want somebody to talk to. And so you do get a chance to really sit down and talk with people and get some information going. So it's a nice show from that standpoint.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed talking to the company reps, and really enjoyed visiting Grant at the Steyr Arms booth. So with that, We're going to head into the main topic, Steyr Arms.
Do you shop on Amazon? How about your spouse? Does your mom? Does your company? Why not use the Firearms Radio Network's Amazon affiliate link next time you shop Amazon? Bookmark firearmsradio.tv/Amazon or click through the Amazon link in the right-hand corner of firearmsradio.tv. Get it? Got it? Amazon it.
All right, so we're into the main topic. Now, Grant is an author, a trainer, and a gunsmith that I've had the honor of speaking with for about a year now. I've been a fan of his work much longer than that, and Grant has been using the Steyr pistols as a defensive firearm for a number of years now, and he's also currently using the Steyr AUG as his chosen rifle. Now, I almost made the mistake. AUG.
AUG, yes.
And if you don't know, Grant is a guest on the Gun Nation podcast with the inimitable Doc Wesson and Paul the Blade Carlson and Ian McCullum and Average Joe. So be sure to check that out. I know gotta mention Doc's name in here.
Yeah, and don't forget Melody Lauer, our
yes,
latest
Melody.
division. Yeah,
Yes.
Don't forget her.
I believe Doc keeps calling her Melanie.
Yeah, that's kind of an inside joke.
So into the Steyr here. Now, I personally myself, I had never up in Maine. We kind of have your run of the mill, your Glocks, your SIGs, and we don't really have some of the lesser known or the lesser distributed guns. And it's kind of unfairly not. It's not out on the market, and it's kind of unfair to the gun because when I finally got to handle the Steyr pistol at the booth, I was really impressed. Now, looking at the guns at first, you look at them and the grip angle is even more pronounced than like a Glock. And for me, that is typically a downside. I don't care for the grip angles on the Glocks. The Steyr pistols, though, there was a huge difference. I think it was the way the grip was designed, the way it's cut on the underneath the beaver tail and stuff. It just sits so perfectly in your hand. At least for me, it did. So you're known as a revolver guy, Grant. And what was your background with semi-auto pistols and rifles prior to you carrying a Steyr?
Well, actually, I've told this story before, when I was a kid, everybody wanted to play Cowboys and Indians, and I never wanted to do that. I wanted to play World War II because believe it or not, I didn't like revolvers and lever-action rifles when I was a kid. And what I wanted was a .45 automatic and an M1 carbine because that's what I saw in all the war movies. And so those are the things I wanted. And so when I was old enough to buy my first handgun as an adult, right? I'm legally able to buy a handgun. And so the first handgun I bought was actually a Smith & Wesson Model 59, which was double stack 9mm, which was a really stupid gun to buy because it didn't fit my hands at all. I couldn't reach the trigger. It was really a dumb purchase, but I didn't know any better, and besides, it was cheap. So those two motivating factors. But after that, I started competing and used a number of different auto-loading pistols, concentrating mostly on 1911s, and I had a brief fling with the Browning high power and a longer fling with CZ75 clones, mostly the Jerichos from Israel and the Tank Folios. And so I was actually carrying and shooting autoloaders long before I got my first revolver, and the only reason I got the first revolver was because, again, it was a deal that I couldn't pass up. And I couldn't shoot it worth a darn in double action. And so that motivated me to sit down and really learn how to shoot a double action revolver. And so I spent the better part of a decade competing with and carrying revolvers exclusively. And a lot of that was simply because of efficiency. The revolver is a very, very efficient gun in terms of a response to an attack because there are no safeties you have to deal with, there are no grip safeties you have to depress, all that sort of thing. It's actually conceptually much closer to a Glock than it is a 1911 because there's nothing between you and the trigger is what makes the gun fire. And so conceptually, the revolvers fit in with my desire to get away from having extraneous levers and safeties, that kind of thing. And the problem with a lot of the very efficient handguns, we didn't have a really good choice. This is before the XDs, before the MMPs. And so if you wanted a really efficient gun, you were going to buy a Glock. Glocks don't fit my hands really well. Well, it's been over a decade now. It's probably been close to 15 years ago now. The Steyr S9 came out, and excuse me, Masad Ayub did a review on it. I thought, okay, this is pretty cool. And we found one at the local dealer, and okay, this is great. My wife liked it too, so we bought one. And I started carrying it, and I really liked the gun. And so when I wasn't carrying a revolver, I was carrying that Steyr S9. And I was probably carrying the revolver more often than the auto back in those days. But as time has gone on and we're seeing an increase in frequency of multiple assailant attacks, when I go into the, quote, big city, I usually put on an autoloader because of capacity issues, and so I would put on the Steyr. And that's how I got started. And it went from autoloaders to revolvers, and now a mix of autoloaders and revolvers.
Well, in the Steyr pistols, they use your typical tilt lock system like you would see on most of your modern striker fired semi-autos, but they have a number of features that kind of set them apart. One of the things that I noticed personally was how low it sat in the hand and how comfortable it was and how it pointed very naturally. In your opinion, what sets the Steyr pistols apart from the other similar handguns on the market?
Well, for me, there were a number of things. First of all, I've got small hands, and it was one of the few guns on which I could actually reach the trigger and reach the magazine release and everything else. And so that was a big draw for me, simply being able to reach the trigger, which is a major accomplishment when you've got hands as small as I have. The fact that, and you notice that it sits very, very low in the hand, and that's an intentional design criteria because, and people talk about this now, but back then nobody was talking about it. The lower the bore axis relative to the hand, the less muzzle flip you are going to have. And it's simple physics. There's less leverage that the gun has on your hand, so you tend to come back on target faster given the lower bore axis. At that time, my only other autoloading pistol that I really liked was an HKP-7, and that has the lowest bore axis of any gun I've ever fired. And the Steyr was close to that, not quite as radical as the P7, but fairly close to that. So I like the fact that it set really low in the hand and had very, very controllable muzzle flip. And the other thing I liked about it were the sights, and that's something that a lot of people look at it kind of askew at first, are the Steyr trapezoidal sights, but for me, I really like them from the outset. So those are the things that really drove me.
Well, speaking of the sights, I have a lot of people that I've talked to that they see those and because they're unconventional, they kind of write them off. They're like, "Oh, I wouldn't want to use those. I'm used to the traditional sights." And I had never tried them, so I tried them at the show, and they are incredibly intuitive. It was almost as if you could kind of close your eyes, bring the gun up, and they were pretty much right aligned as though they should be.
Yeah, in fact, what I usually find is that most people who pick the gun up usually try to overthink the sights.
Right.
Oh, okay, where do I need to align this, and what do I? No. Just bring the gun into your line of sight and allow the sights to align naturally. And the design of the sights, as you said, are very, very intuitive. The eye naturally centers that big triangle in the rear sight, and it doesn't require the kind of cognitive effort that our conventional post and notch sights typically require. The other thing that I found is for people like me who wear glasses, and I've got bifocals now, I can't actually focus on the front sight at any time. And what I discovered is that when I'm focused on the target, which is what I have to do because I can't focus on the sights, when I'm focused on the target, if I need the precision that the sights give me, most of the time at typical defense shooting distances, we don't typically even bother with the sights. We can align the gun on target without using those alignment guides. But if you need the precision that the sights offer, you have that shot where you need that level of precision. even focused on the target, I can still align those sights because that front triangle is just huge. It's much bigger even than one of the big dots, and it's very easy to align that on target and get the tip of the front sight right where you want the bullet to go, even though it's out of focus. And this is for those people who maybe have good eyesight. The other thing to keep in mind is that when we study physiology and we study behavioral psychology and all those other neat things, and we find out that, during a natural threat reaction, the physiological changes and the psychological changes mean that a lot of people, perhaps most people, aren't actually going to be able to focus on their sights. They're going to focus on the threat because that's the natural thing to do. So the net result is, even if your eyes are good, if you're focused on the threat because of that natural threat reaction, you can still align the sights on target and use them quite effectively if you need that level of precision. So the sights work out really, really well, I think, for not just people with eyesight issues like me, but for that sort of plausible self-defense response that we're going to have.
Yeah, my only thing that I'm kind of sad about is the fact that the distribution of the handgun seems kind of limited. I know in my area we haven't seen much of anything, and I've been doing a little searching, and there's a few available, but most of the dealers I've called just don't have them. They have to order them.
Yeah, I think that's the case with a lot of the smaller manufacturers, and Steyr is a smaller manufacturer. And so, for instance, it's even a name that might be a little more familiar to people, the car arms guns. There are a lot of stores that I go into that don't have car arms.
Yeah, I got lucky. I had to get mine. I got mine in a private sale, but most of the stores around here had the larger models or the premium models, but they didn't have the CM series, which was what I was looking for.
Yeah, so the smaller the manufacturer, once you get out from Glock, Smith & Wesson, and Springfield, the smaller manufacturers get harder and harder to find. I hear the same thing, the same complaints from people about the Walther pistols. The Walthers are hard to find. And so distribution is always an issue with the smaller guys. Luckily, in the age of the internet, we have grabagun.com and places like that where we can get these things and have them shipped to our local dealers. So that makes it a little easier.
Now, moving on to the Steyr rifles, while it looks modern, the AUG was actually designed and then introduced in the 1970s. We don't see them very often. Now, before we get into the specific rifles, do you have experience with the AUG only, or have you worked with their Scout rifles as well?
I played with a Scout rifle back when they first were introduced, and this is back when the Jeff Cooper signature package Scout rifle was available. And I don't think that's available anymore. But when they were first introduced, I got a chance to shoot one fairly extensively and got to play with it a little bit. So I've had some experience with them. Not a lot. Certainly not in the thousands of rounds, but I do have some experience with the Scouts as well.
I was pretty impressed. I had not had a chance to handle one before the show, and the triggers on them were very nice. The safety was a little bit strange, wasn't it? A little roller safety on the back underneath the bolt. Yeah,
as I recall, that's yeah.
But I did like the setup they had at the show. It was very nice.
Yeah, the Scout. Interestingly enough, the Steyr Scout is the only Scout rifle that's on the market that Jeff Cooper actually worked on, that he actually worked with the company on. And it's also, I believe, and forgive me if I'm speaking out of school here, but I believe it's the only Scout rifle that actually makes the specifications that Cooper set out for it, which was 1 meter in length, 3 kilos in weight in a major caliber. And pretty much everybody else is either the guns are longer or they're heavier than that. And so if you want to really experience the concept as Cooper envisioned it, the Steyr Scout, or actually I think they're calling it the Mannlicher Scout now, is really the only option. And it feels very different than all the other pseudo Scouts that are on the market.
I definitely like that setup because, like we were talking before, with the red dot, the optical sights that are on the market nowadays, I was noticing a lot at the show when I would shoulder them, the red dot would be like kind of swiped out. It was like someone had taken a thumb and smudged it almost. And I'm not a huge fan of high power magnification scope, so I much prefer that forward mounted low power scope like that's on the Scout rifle.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense for a lot of applications.
Alien Gear Holsters, the most comfortable and concealable holsters on the planet, is offering big savings with our new 2-holster combo. Now you can buy 2 complete holsters for as little as $49.88. Choose from any available holster styles and colors for the guns of your choice. All of Alien Gear's quality products are made right here in the USA and include a 30-day trial, forever warranty, and free shell trades for life. Visit aliengearholsters.com today.
So the AUG, now we did a video on this. It was kind of an impromptu, hey Grant, show me how this rifle works and why you like it. And it actually apparently was pretty popular. I think it's almost up to 10,000 views. So
holy cow.
Yeah, so people were really interested in that. So you've been working with the AUG for a little bit right now, haven't you? And what kind of started you on that path?
Well, the AUG, what started me down this is that one of the things from an instructional standpoint that I look at is whenever I hear something bad-mouthed, and back in the days when, I don't know, maybe a decade ago now, the AK family of rifles, for instance, you would hear nothing but bad-mouthing from instructors who really had no experience with the guns. And back then you heard all kinds of things about the AK. Oh, they're unergonomic, the safeties are awful, you can't run them fast, all this sort of thing. And luckily over the years, some people took a really hard look at the AK pattern rifles and said, no, there's some real advantages to some parts of this gun, and maybe we should look at it, and instead of trying to teach it like we would an AR-15, how about if we actually develop techniques specific to the AK so that we can get the most out of the rifle? And so fast forward to today, and bullpup rifles are finally now becoming readily available for really the first time in history, at least in this country. And you're kind of hearing the same things, the same sorts of things about bullpup rifles and about the AUG in particular. So I wanted to sit down with one and really work with it like I did the revolver way back when, to find out, what's the best way to run it? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And so that's why I've been running one.
Do you think that's sort of the reason we don't see the AUG a lot over here, because bullpups are kind of unfairly looked down upon?
That may be part of it. A lot of it really is politics. And what I mean by that is that bullpup rifles have been prohibited from importation since 1986, I think, when then President Bush signed an executive order that said you can't import quote-unquote assault rifles whole into the United States, and that law is still in effect. And so among the rifles that was named specifically was the AUG, and because of the sporting purposes clause, the government has not allowed any bullpups to be imported into the country. And it's just recently that has changed, not the politics part, but the logistics part of it, because modern manufacturing methods, modern CNC methods, mean that we can set up manufacturing for the receivers of these guns and do them here, and then bring in the parts that we need, mix them with an appropriate number of American parts, which you have to do, and produce a bullpup rifle in the country. And that's how not just the AUG is being produced, but the IWI Tavor. Their receivers and some other parts are being made here too, because that's the only way to get them into the country. So yeah, part of it is prejudice, part of it is politics, part of it is manufacturing technology. So the net result is it's only really today that we're starting to see numbers of bullpup rifles available to the general public.
I remember a period of time, too, there were a few companies that were making, clones or copies of the AUG that were, from what I understand, less than stellar. And, so it's nice to actually see the original company being able to make them the way they should be made and have them available on the U.S. market.
And they're making them now in the country here, and they run like a top, just like you would expect them to. So I think the worst thing that happened to the AUG were really the clones that were being made, because they often didn't run and had all kinds of issues. And in fact, the last company that was making those clones went out of business here a month or two ago.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. So what features does the AUG have that set it apart from other modern rifles that you've worked with?
Well, of course, the big thing is the bullpup design, which brings the receiver back into the stock and shortens up the length of the gun. And that's, of course, the big thing with a bullpup rifle. The European armies and the Australians and the New Zealanders, for instance, long ago figured out that, hey, having a short rifle is really a neat thing. But our approach here in America to building a short rifle is to chop the barrel down and compromise ballistic performance. The big thing with a bullpup, and the thing that's really attractive, is that you get that short SBR length gun, but you get a full 16.5-inch barrel, so you don't have to worry about the ballistics of the rounds that you're firing nearly as much as you do with the short barrel rifles or the AR pistols. So first of all, of course, compactness. That's a huge one. In the case of most of the bullpups on the market, they are military designs, and they tend to be very, very reliable as a result. That's kind of a side benefit. The ability to, at least on the AUG, the ability to change the barrel is a big attraction for me, because it makes it much easier to clean the gun than having to run a rod down it or a bore snake or something. So those are the big things. The compactness, I think, is the thing that gets most people. The compactness combined with a full-length barrel. That's huge.
There were a bunch of little things that you were showing in the video in terms of like the safety, the magazines, and things that people would look at and immediately write off. Like, for instance, the magazine changes. The way you were talking about it, you're like, people make a big deal out of this, but all you got to do is come up with the mag, hit the button, and the other one drops out, and you're right back into it, and the thing stays on your shoulder.
Exactly. For instance, for me, even a fairly lightweight AR, I have to bring it off the shoulder because I just can't hold that weight and balance that weight out there while fishing around to stick a magazine in. The gun with a bullpup, and this is any bullpup really, can stay on the shoulder. And the great thing is that we can use proprioception, which is the body's ability to locate itself in free space. Proprioception is why, for instance, we can touch our nose when we're doing a field sobriety test. And one of the reasons that we can reload a handgun so fast is because it's relatively easy to bring our hands together. We bring the magazine into the gun and bring our hands together. We can do it with our eyes shut. With, say, an AR pattern rifle, although we're still using proprioception because we're locating our body in free space, it's a bit harder than it is with the bullpup, because with the bullpup, the magazine well is between our hand and our body, so that we have sort of a finite range in which we need to locate this magazine and get it in. From the ability to do it without looking at it, I find it easier with a bullpup than I do with an AR-15. With an AR-15, I almost kind of sort of have to look at it to determine, okay, am I actually in the mag well? With the bullpup rifle, I don't have to do that. It seems to make it easier. So the position of the mag release on the AUG, again, you said it. You hit it with the magazine, the old one drops out, and you stick the new one in. And then you either hit the bolt release or you run the charging handle. And my preference is to run the charging handle. And again, that preference is the same whether I'm using the AUG or even an AR-15. I much prefer running the charging handle. But on an AR-15, to run the charging handle, you have to move your face.
Right.
Or you have to rotate the gun or something. With the AUG, and quite frankly, most other bullpups, the charging handle's out in front, like it would be on an HK, and so you just reach forward, run the charging handle, and you're done. So the gun stays on your shoulder. It stays pretty much on target the whole time. You don't have to move it around. There's no gyrations, all that kind of thing. So I find it in some ways more efficient than using an AR-15.
Well, and it was funny, too, because at the booth I picked the Steyr AUG up, and the first thing I did was push a button which I thought was the bolt release, and it was the takedown button, and the gun almost came apart in my hand. So I made sure I asked you about all the different buttons before I went pressing anything else. But like the safety, for instance, most people would think, oh, crossbolt safety, that's what I got on my grandpa's 22. Why is that efficient? But when you're actually holding the gun, that safety in the safe mode is sticking out into your hand, where your hand would be on the grip near the trigger, and you can just use your knuckle to kind of bump that safety through, and it was very intuitive once you actually tried to use it.
In fact, I found, interesting enough, and I was the same way. I didn't like the crossbolt safety. I thought that was kind of silly. And until I started using it, and again, this is kind of when you start actually using something instead of just looking at it. When you start using something and you discover, oh, the designer kind of knew what they were doing here because it actually works. And the crossbolt safety is like that. In the safe position, I rest my finger on the safety. And when I need to fire, I simply sweep my finger down to the trigger, and in doing that, the safety automatically goes off. And I find it actually more intuitive and easier to do than the AR safety or the FAL safety, because I'm an FAL guy too. And so when I really need that fast response, I only have to do one thing: move my finger to the trigger, instead of two things: move my thumb and then move my finger to the trigger. So I actually find the position of the safety, at least on the AUG, more intuitive than I do the thumb safety. Now, a lot of people will say, well, it's not as ergonomic as the thumb safety. Not for the thumb, no. It's more ergonomic for the trigger finger.
Right. So,
and this is a problem. People use the term ergonomic, and a lot of people really probably need to pick up a dictionary and find out what it really means.
No, at the booth they had two different variants. They had one that I sat there for 20 minutes trying to figure out where the bolt release was, and then until you finally told me there wasn't one, and then one that does. Now, they have one that runs the AR magazines, and then one that runs their proprietary mags. And which one do you prefer, and why?
I've gotten to the point. I did not. Originally, I thought I was going to prefer the one that ran the AR magazines, and I quickly discovered, no, I really prefer the one that runs the proprietary magazines for a couple of reasons. Of course, the one with the AR magazines does not have a bolt release. You have to run the charging handle. For me, that's not a big deal because I run the charging handle anyway. For some people, that might be a deal breaker. The other thing is that the proprietary magazines are simply more reliable. And they've done a good job of re-engineering the gun to use M16 magazines, but the fact is they're just not as reliable as the original ones are. Of course, especially if you're using metal magazines, all of the old complaints about the AR come back, because one of the weak points of the AR-15 has always been the magazines, right? This is why we have so many replacement magazines on the market. With the Steyr, the stock clear polymer magazines are very, very rugged, very durable, and they've proven themselves in military service. I've discovered I really like the ability to see how many rounds are in the magazine. Now, I'll be honest, I did not think I really needed that. I thought it was kind of silly. Didn't think that was useful at all, but I've gotten to the point where I could just look at a magazine and say, yeah, there's about a box of ammo in there, without having to even think about it. So that's kind of nice. And for those people who balk at the idea of paying for the Steyr brand magazines, Magpul does make Steyr magazines now. So if you want those $12 or $14 magazines, you can get them. And if you want the original equipment ones, and particularly the 42-round original equipment magazine, which is just cool, you can get the Steyr ones. So you've got choice there.
Right, and with the change in magazines, you got the ARs and the stock polymer ones. You run into that old saying where the further you go away from the original design, typically the more problems you're going to run into. Like when we hear about people with smaller 1911s or something like that, or guns in 9mm that were designed for 45. It doesn't run right. Well, you're going to probably get the most reliable out of a 5-inch government model, the original design.
Right. And there's kind of I think, a false economy sometimes. Let's face it, the AUG, in fact, any bullpup, is an expensive gun relative to an AR-15. That's just the nature of the beast. It's going to cost you more. And I think it's kind of false economy to say, well, I'm going to spend all this money on this rifle, but I want to save $100 on the magazines that I'm going to need, or $200 or whatever it is. And so I'm going to buy one that takes the magazines I've already got. To me, that's kind of false economy.
Now, the gas system, I was kind of curious about that, runs along the right side of the rifle, right?
Well, it's a piston. So it's a short stroke piston. So there's a piston up near the front hand grip, and then the piston rod drives back along the right hand side of the rifle to drive the bolt carrier back.
Now, you mentioned something in the video about the bolt being cold after quite a string of fire.
Yeah, because the gun is piston operated, of course, all the heat stays in the barrel because the piston is attached to the barrel. So if those people who have got, say, FALs or M1 carbines or something like that, where you've got that piston that's contained on the barrel, know what that's like. Or a Mini 14, I think, is the same way. So you've got the short stroke piston up on the barrel that drives the rod clear back to operate the action. And as a result, there's no heat being transferred back to the bolt. So those of us who are used to AR-15s and the bolt getting very, very hot, the bolt in the AUG, of course, stays completely cool. And it's a little odd. It's the strangest adjustment when that bolt is not getting hot back there. And most people, you tell them, well, the bolt stays cold, and go, well, really? Well, yeah, and any piston-driven gun, the bolt is going to just stay cold. But it's a little different for those of us who have been shooting AR-15s a long time.
Now, before we wrap up here, what might be some disadvantages of the AUG platform that you've seen?
Well, it is a little heavier. You can get very, very lightweight AR-15s now, down around 6 pounds, right? The AUG is going to weigh 8.5. So it's a heavier rifle, but most people, when they pick it up, discover that the balance is such that it feels lighter when it's on the shoulder. It feels lighter than it really is because there's really very little weight out in front of the trigger. The weight is very, very well centered. So, but it is a slightly heavier gun. That may be a disadvantage. All bullpups are somewhat limited in the amount of rail space that they have. You don't get that 3 lineal feet of rail space that you get with a typical AR-15, like a 16-inch AR-15. When you measure the rail space, it's darn near 3 feet because, of course, you've got rail all the way around the barrel and you got a long rail on the top and all that kind of thing. You don't have that on any bullpup, and especially the AUG. So you have to be a lot more discriminating about what optics or what sights or what accessories you put on it because you just don't have a whole lot of room to hang crap. On the plus side, that also means that your rifle isn't going to end up weighing as much either. So some people will consider that a downside. I've simply gotten to the point where I pick better stuff to put on it and get around that. Of course, availability, price is probably the big one because a lot of people will look at it and say, I can buy two good AR-15s for the price of an AUG. And yeah, that's true. We're talking, and this is true of all the bullpups, the Tavors, for the same reason. They're going to be more expensive simply because they are relatively limited production. Everybody and their dog is making AR-15s, and there's only one company making the AUG and only one company making the Tavor. So cost is certainly going to be a big factor for some people.
Yeah, the rail space argument actually is a good thing for me because if I had an AR, which I know it's hearsay, but I don't have one yet, I like running them clean. I don't like really anything on them. Just simple iron sights, and that's it. That's what I want.
Yeah, I tend to be of the same thought. The other thing is that if you like to run iron sights, a bullpup may or may not be really a good idea because you don't have a very long sight radius on any bullpup. So you're going to put an optical sight of some sort on it.
I'm pretty sure you and I share an affinity for the original M16A1 with the triangle handguard and no forward assist. That would be if I could ask for an AR, I'd be like, I want the original setup with no forward assist because they're pointless and just clean lines all the way through, nice and light.
In fact, I've considered there are companies making retro uppers and lowers these days that you can buy that don't have forward assists and all that kind of thing. And I keep thinking, I should build a retro AR-15 with the triangular handguards, no forward assist and all that kind of thing. And one of these days I'll get around to it.
So if you could see any changes made to the AUG design, what might they be?
It's hard to say. A lot of it, because the AUG is a military rifle, a lot of it is driven by what the militaries of the countries that use it want. And of course, originally the AUG had integrated optics. That was your only option. You had to buy it with the integrated optic back in the 80s when they were first available. And today you can get it either with the integrated optic or with a rail where you can put your own optic on. So that's been kind of a big change for the AUG. It's become more flexible in that regard. And a lot of militaries wanted the same thing. They wanted to put their own optic on it. So that's been an upgrade. I would like to see better integration of lights and lasers on the thing. That would be kind of nice. I'd like to see a weight reduction. That would be nice. It's great now, don't get me wrong, and of course because of the balance, if it like I said, it feels lighter on the shoulder than it really is, but still a weight reduction would be really nice. I'd like to
any different calibers maybe?
No, that really doesn't interest me personally. I know a lot of people have talked about 300 blackout. The problem with 300 blackout in a bullpup is that I don't know if you've seen what happens when you chamber a 300 blackout in a 223 and pull the trigger, but it is not pretty. And given the proximity of the chamber to the shooter's face in any bullpup design, I think that becomes a safety issue.
Right.
So you're certainly not going to see an AUG in 300 blackout. That is not going to happen. I don't know if you'll see a Tavor in that or not, but it does raise some important safety issues.
That's definitely something to look at.
Yeah. The only other thing, I wouldn't mind seeing something 6.8 SPC or 6.5 Grendel or something like that would be kind of cool. But I'm okay with the 223 round in the role that this kind of rifle is intended to play. I'm okay with it.
Absolutely. So that about wraps up our main topic. So we're going to head into the wrap-up section and close out the show.
Ballroom jeans, fire hose work pants, and long-tail tees are three favorites among the men of Gun Guy Radio. Duluth Trading Company has perfected the art of clothing the manly man. If you want manly comfort that's trusted by these gun guys, go to gunguyradio.com/Duluth and check out the other manly essentials Duluth Trading Company offers gun guys like us.
So, Grant, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to come on and talk about this. I know,
oh, man. Always happy to.
There was a lot of people that really liked the video we did there, kind of an impromptu video, and I'm glad it actually got as much coverage as it did, kind of showing off the sort of a rifle that not a lot of people look at. They overlook it very out of hand just because, it's a bullpup, or, it's, like you said, really or more expensive than your standard AR. But it offers stuff that you don't typically see. So very, very, very appreciative of the time you spent. And do you have any projects coming up? And where can people find you?
Well, I just finished another book, and that'll be out in November. It's a book of defensive training drills, and I wrote that for people to be able to go to the range and to work on, develop specific self-defense skills, as opposed to some of the books that are out there that just talk about, this is for better gun handling or better marksmanship. The book I just finished is on very, very specific self-defense skills, very specific things to work on, and drills to develop them. More importantly, it gives the user, the reader, a way to interpret the results that they're seeing on their targets. So that's coming out in November. And of course, I've got a fairly full teaching schedule. I'll be in several states this year. I'll be in Ohio and in Indiana and in Michigan and California. So I've got teaching a lot around the country this summer and again this fall. So those are the major things right now.
And your website's grantcunningham.com and personalsecurity.us. How's personal security going?
Going really well. The blog on personalsecurity.us has got a lot of really great articles that I write, or sometimes that I find, talking about self-defense and concepts of self-defense and the application of self-defense from a wide variety of perspectives, from skill development to legal issues to sometimes some moral and ethical talk as well.
Excellent. So be sure to go check those out. There are links in the show notes. So again, Grant, thank you very much for taking the time, and I think the listeners will really appreciate the discussion.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure talking with you. I'm glad I finally got a chance to get face-to-face with you at the NRA show, and hoping we'll see you at SHOT Show in January.
Absolutely.
Gun Guy Radio says thank you and proudly displays artwork and graphics designed by Ryan Cross of Hunter of Design. HunterofDesign.com.
Hey, it's Jake here, just checking in here on Ryan, and I wanted to make sure that you're enjoying this episode of Gun Guy Radio. And if you are, please consider going over to patreon.com/gun. What is Patreon, you may ask? Well, Patreon is a simple way for you to crowdfund every episode of Gun Guy Radio. If you're enjoying this show, you can go over to patreon.com/gun and pledge either $1 an episode or $5 an episode to, throw your support behind pro-gun radio like this. And also we have some companies that are throwing their support behind Gun Guy Radio by giving some gift cards and gear to send out in random battle boxes that go out to only our patrons here at Gun Guy Radio. Alien Gear Holsters have given $25 gift cards. Works Holsters have given $25 gift cards. LA Police Gear has given some bags, and Duluth Trading Company has given $50 gift cards. Not to mention Duke Cannon Supply Company has also given field box gift packs of big-ass bricks of soap, and GunGoddess.com has also included $25 gift cards. You can get all that and more in a random drawing of our battle boxes that we send out to the exclusive group of patrons of Gun Guy Radio. So walk, don't run over to Patreon. Wait, I said that wrong. Patreon.com/gun.
Well, that about wraps it up for this week's episode of Gun Guy Radio. Please remember to subscribe to us in iTunes so that you never miss a show, and please leave us a review there as well, gunguyradio.com/iTunes. Also, please consider joining the NRA and also the Second Amendment Foundation. There are links there in the show notes. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Firearms Radio Network. This is Ryan Bachad. Thanks for having me, and I'll see you next week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv. Are you looking for an extraordinary daily carry option? Look no further. Car Arms is giving away a P9 with night sights right here on the Firearms Radio Network. It's Car's EDC drawing. To enter, simply become a Patreon of any Firearms Radio Network show. Current patrons are automatically entered. But wait, there's more. Keybar, Hellbent holsters, Alien Gear holsters, precision ear, and more have ponied up to enhance your EDC loadout. See all of these awesome prizes and more ways to enter at firearmsradio.tv/EDC.